Thank you for joining us. This is live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Our guest today is Vanessa Liebl from ChoiceMD. All right, you've got quite a story. All right, and people want to know, number one, why you went into business. Put aside, okay, the name of this. All right, well, why did you go into business first? All right, and then why did you choose this particular field?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to reach out to everybody. So ChoiceMD actually was started because of my personal need. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 21 years ago. And when that happened, I really didn't know how to navigate the healthcare system. I realized it was just a difficult task. I was only 21 at that time. And so a lot of people were telling me, you have to connect with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. And I'm saying, well, I don't want to be a lab rat. And I kept pushing it off and I kept saying, no, I don't want to. I can do it on my own. I'm totally independent. And there came a point that I had maxed out all my credit cards on the medications that I was taking. I was trying to do it on my own. And I said, I've got to go find out what this National MS Society is. And when I walked in there, everybody there knew what I was going through. And everything they did was for people like myself, going through the same struggles. And they just very gently and kindly held my hand and walked me through the entire process. And I realized in the healthcare system, that's the one thing that's missing is people don't understand that there's so many organizations out there that will help, that will assist the people. And so that was the first idea is instead of just a directory, which we do need as patients, we need more than that. We need a community that we can connect to that will help us guide us through these situations. And so it started to evolve from there. I took obviously the directories. We have directories for doctors, dentists, hospitals, nonprofit organizations, schools for kids with special needs, assisted living facilities. I figured if it's healthcare related, it should all be under one site to really help people navigate the healthcare system.
But Vanessa, excuse me, but one of the things that people who have never experienced having to take care of somebody that was sick, a parent, grandparent, wife, right? It is pretty monstrous and pretty overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And it's like, where do you go? All right.
Right.
And then where do you start? And who's going to be empathetic and who's going to help direct you? Who's going to listen to you? Who's going to be able to sit there while you're crying your eyes out because number one, you don't understand the system. And two, that your loved one needs this care.
Right.
So when you were overwhelmed and you said, okay, I'm going to go to an organization that I knew before, right? You went there, but then you started recognizing there was another need for people. So tell us about how you put your organization ChoiceMD together.
Well, so that's exactly what it is. I understood that there's so many health complications that people are confronted with. And to go to so many different sites, the resources that are out there, you can go to the American Cancer Society, you can go to the National MS Society, you can go to so many, the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. But if one family is encountering different problems, let's just have it all under one site. So that's what I started doing is one by one within our community, I went out to the different nonprofit organizations and I started formulating partnerships. To date, we have just under 50 partnerships, everything from the Children's Trust to the Alzheimer's Association. We cover everyone to give them support. The idea is they need those resources. They need that community. Yes, we patients need to find doctors, the best care that we can, but we also need to find that community that's there to support us. So that's part of what ChoiceMD does and help guiding people through the journey.
So ChoiceMD, and people can find you online at, interesting enough, choicemd.com.
Correct. Right? Yes.
The service that you provide, are referral-based information, or do you directly have docs working for you or with you?
So here's the beauty about ChoiceMD, and this is what, as a patient, I wanted to see. Arriving into Miami, because I'm not from Miami, I said, if I were to be able to see the whole scope of the picture, what are all the doctors, what are all the neurologists? And so that's what our directory has. We have all the doctors that are licensed through the state of Florida in the Miami-Dade County on our registry. Now, it is community-based, and I do want it to be an unbiased resource. So we have packages. Right now, the packages are free, but it's open to every doctor, in which case we want them to go on there, claim their profile, and really tag what it is that they specialize in so that patients can connect with those doctors. But really, it's community based. It takes the whole community's involvement, and that's really what's beautiful about it.
And you're very involved in the community. So tell us about some of the organizations which you belong and participate in.
Absolutely. So I'm a board member to the Advocacy Network on Disabilities. I also last year chaired the City of Coral Gables Disability Affairs Board, but I now hold the ex officio seat for the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce member. I sit on the Beacon Council Life Sciences
Good for
Health
you.
Committee. There's a lot. I really like getting involved with the community and helping out.
And the Coral Gables Chamber is pretty good.
Yeah, it's the number one in South Florida.
It is, and under its direct leadership and board of directors, and I won't say Mark Trowbridge's name, but Mark, good job. All right. Very active organization. And so tell us about the reasons why you're also active in all these organizations.
Well, part of it is, one, I studied martial arts for 16 years. And in that, you really get this community aspect of fighting for the underdog. And getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at a young age, I realized people with disabilities are the underdogs. It's really a difficult challenge. And so that was my ability to give back to the community. And so that's why I do everything I do for the disability community.
Can we talk about when before you were diagnosed, what you were going through, and then when you heard you were diagnosed? Because there's somebody out there that one day may be diagnosed with this. So let's talk, if you'd like to, we can talk about
that. Yeah, absolutely. So I was working retail, actually. I worked at Emporio Armani. I was 20 at the time. And I just remember, and I was doing martial arts. I was a black belt in martial arts. I was going to college. And I remember, sure enough, one day to the next, I lost sensation in my legs. I thought it was a martial arts injury, so I didn't say anything about it. I waited a month later. It was both legs. It had gone all the way up. I had lost sensation. At that point, I went to the neurologist. And the first time, and this happens to a lot of people, it was misdiagnosed with spinal myelitis, which is, they thought it was just a virus that had attacked my spinal cord. Essentially, that's what MS looks like, but it has to happen multiple times. And so a year later, almost exactly a year later, the same symptoms came back.
Did the symptoms go away?
So the first time with the neurologist, they put me on a set of steroids, I think over the course of a month, and the symptoms did go away. And I was able to walk fine. The sensation never fully came back. It was almost like my hands and feet had pins and needles at all times, but it was fine. Just thinking that it was just a temporary thing was good enough. The year later, when it happened again, that was really the terrifying thing, because I had already been, I guess, preempted to, if it happens again, it could possibly be one of these things. And multiple sclerosis was something that I had known about. My mom actually has a friend, or had a friend, who suffered from it. I'm grateful, knock on wood, that I don't have it's not as debilitating for me as it was for her. But yeah, here I am 20-something years later, still. So
do you personally get calls from patients or people that are symptomatic with some illnesses, and do you get an opportunity to talk with them?
So we don't. We are just a website connecting people to all the resources within the community. I do, on a personal level, when I open up to my story now with ChoiceMD, a lot of people know about that. And I do, on a personal level, get a lot of people that just, I think when you go through any health complication, you feel that vulnerability and connection to somebody else. And so a lot of people do open up about their health problems. I guide them the best that I can, but I usually to the nonprofits.
And when people are able to open up, they feel better, even if it's only temporary. The reality is so many things are just temporary. And lots of people think that, well, we had COVID. It started essentially 2.25 years ago. All right, it came and it went, it came and it went. It's still impacted us. So here it is, for the most part, for most with COVID, is not history yet, but it's still recent memory. But it still does affect us a lot.
Absolutely.
So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because we are running an ACEs campaign. It's an Adverse Childhood Experiences campaign. I found out probably about 9-10 months ago. I was watching a TED Talk by Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, and she was talking about how in the mid 90s, Kaiser Permanente and CDC did a study of 17,000 individuals. And they found, and these were individuals that were college educated, middle income, what you would consider well off individuals. And they found two remarkable things, which was ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, were really common. And the other one was that 4 or more would lead to health complications later on in life. And that right there stopped me in my tracks, because I have a 7-year-old daughter who I went through that whole, we're still going through this whole pandemic. And I see the transition, or I see how she has transitioned from being a resilient child to being a terrified child. It got to the point that we had to take her to a program through the University of Miami called KMAT, which is wonderful. I'll throw them out there. It's the Child and Anxiety, Mood and Therapy Center. But they helped us realize that this pandemic for these kids really is just something they can't see it. It's something that changed their life from one day to the next, and they can't quite put their finger on their fear. So they're displaying fears in other ways. My daughter was scared of a cartoon, a green hand, and I couldn't get her to go into the bathroom. She couldn't go anywhere with the lights off. Obviously, it got to the point that we took 6 months of these classes with the university. And I said, I've got to do something after seeing, how it affects our health, and then, what it is that I can do with our kids now. And so I did, through the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. They had the legislative roundup about a year ago. And I met Representative Duran. And right then and there, and there were two partners. And I said, what Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris said is that if we can just give these kids the support that they need, then we can essentially help soften some of the blows, at least lower the anxiety levels so that their health complications aren't so grave later on in life, or at least teach them how to deal with these stressors. And so my thought was, I approached Representative Duran and I said, can we universally screen our kids in school? Can we find out what their stressors are? And depending on what their stressors are, can we connect them to the nonprofit organizations in the community? And the idea only came to me because I have all those community partners throughout ChoiceMD. If somebody were to experience family violence, we have the organization Be Strong International. There's just so many different organizations that we could connect people to.
One of the things that we all understand, if we can start giving our children information when they're young and try to empower them, and that they can talk with people and their parents, or maybe it's a teacher or a principal, so they can express that anxiety, that they will certainly be better off. When my daughter was about this big, she came home one day. She said, Daddy, if you hit me, I'm going to call the police. I said, good. Where'd you learn that? She said, school. I said, good. All right. And for a child to be able to express that, all right, is really good.
That's
and
great.
And they learn that, and it's a wonderful thing. So we know that May is Mental Health Month. It's around the corner. We're going to be talking with a lot of healthcare practitioners along that arena. We know that drug abuse, alcohol abuse, car accidents, drugs overdoses are occurring massively. And a lot of that is connected to the stress that we've all been under for, a lifetime.
Right.
And the changes that have occurred in our lives in this 24 months, it's equivalent 5 or 10 or 15 years. We see that in business, how people are conducting their business. And I just saw that a lot of restaurants now are not, they do not want to have deliveries anymore. They want people to come into their restaurants, right? And even when there's a pizza place that says, if you come in and pick it up, we're going to give you $3. The message is clear. We want to have a relationship, not with the middle person.
Right.
And certainly that's one of the things that we have missed, is that closeness with our family and friends. And even today, we can still see people are getting used to it, but we're waiting for the next thing.
Right.
When is that going to happen? So there might be, and I know we're about in the middle of the program here, but there might be a young person that's looking at you right now that has some medical issue that may be weighing on them. All right. Mm-hmm. And what I'd like you to do is look into, and Andre says, if we get the camera on, into the red one right over there, mm-hmm. and talk to them, all right, about what they might be facing.
Oh, it's difficult. If I reflect back on what it was like when I was diagnosed, it's alienating and it's lonely, but only until you find a community. I was lucky enough, after a while of fighting it to find the National MS Society. And like I said, there you connect with the support groups, you connect with the people that you see that are thriving, and that's truly what gives you hope. And that's what I tell so many people. You do need to find the right doctors, you need all the right support systems, but more than anything, I've always said this, you need emotional support. So reach out to those people and connect.
Right. Thank you. And we never know when something like that you said is going to matter. And maybe they were looking today to say, this just happened. I just got diagnosed. I'm not sure what it means. Right. And continue on with your volunteerism, because I think that's important for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, the Advocacy Network on Disabilities, really, they actually all tie in together. The Coral Gables Disability Affairs Board, the Advocacy Network on Disabilities, I actually like to tie them together to strengthen both initiatives, because they're doing wonderful jobs. So our city, the Coral Gables Advisory Board on Disability Affairs, just to give you an idea of what we did last year, we started the Gables Unique Identifiers during emergencies. And that was something that when I found out, imagine I found out, I connected with the Alzheimer's Association, and the one thing I told them, or they asked me, is what can a city do to help people that are going through Alzheimer's? And I asked them, well, you tell me, what can they do? I don't know. And they said, one of the problems that, an elderly person is they'll wander off. And if a police officer finds them, they have to take them and Baker Act them. Well, that means that they take them to a holding cell until they find out where their family is. And I said, we live in such a small community in Coral Gables that if we could start a registry, if we could just get their pictures on there and know their information, and Chief Hudak and the whole police department has been so amazing that we started it. That's what we did. So now if there's individuals with autism, gosh, there's so many individuals that are being born with autism right now. There's 1 in 44. And so if you think about it, if you're a parent and your child wanders off, just to know that security, you live in a community that they can go, they can wander off safely, as best as you can say it. Those things matter. The park, the Salvador Park, that one is really a pride and joy for our board. It's Coral Gables' first ADA compliant, fully accessible park. And everything from the artificial grass that doesn't interfere with the hearing aids, to just everything, to it's really truly remarkable what we do. And I do this because inclusion matters, and it matters at a young age.
And many years ago, my father had a stroke, and he could walk around, but he would say the same 10 things over and over. So one day he sort of escaped from his girlfriend that he was living with, and he's wandering, dragging his arm and his leg. He gets the police grab him. So somehow they got my phone number. They said, we're going to Baker Act him. He's schizophrenic. I said, no, he had a stroke. All right, please don't Baker Act him. I'll be there in 2 hours. All right. And just by virtue that they called and they reached out, prevented him from getting locked up. All right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's important that people understand that we need to be looking out for people when they wander. Right.
Yes.
One day, by the way, we lost him. He was on Metro Rail. All right. And another time, I get a call. I call the police here in South Miami. I go, listen, I'm looking for my father. I don't know where he is. Oh, that must be the guy over at Social Security screaming money, money, money. And it was actually sort of humorous at the time. So we understand those things happen frequently. And the things that I was looking for then was a support system that I could say, hey, this is happening. Go, yeah, that's what happens.
Normal.
Right?
Yeah.
And so right now, talk a little bit more about your organization and how it can help somebody who's beginning their journey of providing direction for a loved one.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, we're right now in the process of creating a new widget for our website that would simplify it even more. So let's say, in my case, I'll just keep using my case, multiple sclerosis. If I go onto the site and it'll, through a series of questions, it'll ask some questions. I'll have what is it that you want, you're searching for, and it'll propagate all the resources within the county for multiple sclerosis, be it support groups, be it nonprofit organizations, be it doctors, rehab facilities, whatever that specializes in that area. So that would make it a lot simpler just from the finding the resources. The next step, I would say, is connect with a nonprofit organization. We have close to 50 of them. So we have quite a few that you can connect through on our site.
and all providing direction and support.
Right. And we are, and I haven't mentioned this, but we are also a Google recognized news source. So we do put out health articles as well to keep people up to date with health news.
That's wonderful. And the more information we have, the more comforted we feel. And as far as we're paying attention to those things that matter.
Right.
So do you mind talking about your emotional process from the time that you were diagnosed until you got to the wonderful place that you're on at now?
Sure. You're trying to get me to cry. Yeah, no, of course. It was difficult. I was 20, 21. You're still trying to figure things out. I just, yeah, I was in
camera,
college.
please.
Yes, I was in college trying to figure things out. And I think you realize at that point too, what's more important? Is it your health? Is it your friends? Is it your school? And so you start to learn to prioritize. But it was difficult. I lost a lot of friends because for me, it was more important to think about my health and my future as opposed to going out. And even though I had just turned 21, getting drunk. And so those things are really what shape you in your future. But it was, I guess part of what shaped me in my future. And I've been somewhat of a responsible person too. So,
and it's a process from the grief and the shock, the denial, and to be able to say, okay, this is what's going on. What do you want to do now?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, there's definitely a long period that you go through saying, is there a reason why this happened? You try to find a purpose to it. And I guess in the end, that's what ChoiceMD is my purpose to getting multiple sclerosis.
So we know that the emotional status of somebody that has an illness or a disease or that's disabled, that is not the way they were born with 5 fingers and 5 toes, and all these little things happen, especially as you get older, that stuff happens frequently, right? Well, when you're young, you don't expect it. Do you remember the day that you said, okay, this is it, and this is how I'm going to try to live my life?
Oh, whoa, no, actually I don't, because it's good that you bring that up, because in the 5 stages of grief or whatever you want to call it, for me, the depression lasted a pretty long time, to the point that I was just oblivious, just kind of floating through life. And not depression where you're like sobbing into a pillow, but you're just kind of, so I don't know. I'd say it was a couple of years where I just was lost. But
there was some point where you said, okay, I may be lost, but, all right, do you sort of remember a time frame when you started shifting your thinking about there's a future?
When I went to the support groups. Gosh, I can specifically know the people of the support groups, the names of the people who ran them, the people who were there, the people who I admired. That was it probably.
And that was an awareness you had internally. You go, okay, there's this bright light that's there, right?
Yeah.
And that's what education does for us, to get into that arena, right? And to be able to move forward. I remember the first time I ran a marathon many years ago, New York Marathon. First time, I was completely out of my mind. I'm going, and the guy with the microphone, 20,000 people, said, "Good morning, athletes." And in my entire life, I never heard that because I never was. And I went, "Oh, that's me."
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I subsequently ran a bunch of them. And all it took was that little encouragement. And then we got into the groups that would encourage the growth that you wanted. Right.
Right.
So tell us about some of the things you're doing today that keep encouraging you so you can keep giving back.
Oh, wow. So I can keep giving back. Honestly, doing is what keeps encouraging. Seeing people receive, bringing smiles, I guess, improving people's lives. That's enough for me to keep going. That really is enough for me to keep going. I love it.
Tell us about your education. You're 20 years old plus, and then you get diagnosed, right? Where were you in your education?
So I was going to community college. I had, extended it because at that point, I remember, gosh, this was right when MS had started. So there were only 3 medications back then, or not when it started, but they didn't know that much about it. So when my doctor diagnosed me, he pretty much said, you're going to want to change everything in your life. And you just want to change to something you like doing. I said, really? And, mind you, my mom's friend had died a couple of years afterwards. She had a very progressive form of it. And here's my doctor telling me at 20 something, you probably don't want to go to business. I was going to school for business. And so I said, okay, I'll change to something that I really like. I liked interior design. Well, that was a nightmare. I started working as an interior designer, and that's a whole nother story. But then I went back to business. So over the course of several years, it takes a long process. I think when something like that shakes you in your life, it takes a while to figure out what you want to do. And then I went back to school.
So frequent in life, if you're lucky, you can compartmentalize things.
Mhm.
Say, I got this all going on here, like going to work, don't think about home, go home, don't think about work,
Right.
right? When you're out playing, don't think about whatever it is. So does that occur to you now with your illness, or does it float through and say, yes, I have this and here's what I'm doing, and it's all sort of together?
Yeah, but my illness decides for me what I can do throughout the day, depending on how much energy I have. So you just learn to navigate with it, to be honest with you. But it's not as scary as it was. I mean, it's also 20 something years that I've lived with it already, and it hasn't been that hard for me. So I feel more confident now.
Well, you're smiling on the outside and on the inside too. So my congratulations
Thank you.
in grabbing hold of this and recognizing what it is. All right, that is wherever it is in our cycle. People can go to your site at choicemd.com. They can find out things about this disease, where they can go to get help. All right.
Correct.
So you can refer them to a lot of different places in there, and maybe one of them wants to give you a call. They can do that. Your phone number and contact information is there.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
All the information is on there.
And when is your next Coral Gables Chamber meeting?
Good question. I mean, they have them almost every week.
All the time.
but-
Coral Gables Chamber, Mark Trowbridge.
all the time. They have them almost every week, but I don't know which one I'm registered for yet.
So Mark does a weekly show here
Mhm.
with my brother Grant, who you've met. We're so delighted that you joined us today.
I really appreciate the
Okay.
opportunity. Thank you.
Vanessa, you're an inspiration.
Thank you so much.
Folks, thanks for joining us, and enjoy your afternoon and be safe out there.